Welcome to Life in LA, a look at people and places in Lower Arkansas, our LA. Lower Arkansas is made up of the 15 southernmost counties in the state. Join us each week as we talk to some of the people who make this part of the world such an interesting place to live. And now, let's join Life in LA with our host, Steve Ford.
Sitting at the intersection of West Main and Vine Street in Magnolia, Arkansas, and I'm in the parlor of the old Longino House. My guest today at the South Arkansas Heritage Museum is Amy Staten McNeil. Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Steve. It's great, and we really appreciate you coming by to visit. It's great to have you.
We've been trying to get this set up for a long time, and it's finally come to pass.
Yeah.
Here we are on a Wednesday afternoon. The museum's open every Wednesday, isn't it?
We actually are. Wednesdays are our days, and we open at 10 in the morning and continuously open until 4 in the afternoon.
Is there a charge to visit the museum?
There is not. This is we offer free admission, so it's
The museum is open. There are people touring now, so perhaps we'll hear sounds in the background.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Since we're open, you may.
It'll make it seem like we're actually here, won't it?
You are, okay.
You told me that this is the largest donation the museum will ever receive is the building itself. Tell us about this old Longino house that we're sitting in.
The Longino House has a very unique structure. It was built in 1910, and the period it represents as far as American architecture goes is the end of the Victorian period, the beginning of the Craftsman period. So there are details about this particular house that represent actually both of those periods, and they are distinctly different.
Wow.
But I think they did an awesome job of blending the two into a beautiful two-story house.
One of the things about the house that you told me that is just astounding, how many owners have there been for this house that was built in 1910?
We actually are the third.
Man.
There were two families before us.
Longino? Tell me about the original
Dr.
Longino.
Dr. Henry Longino had this house designed by a famous architect from Texarkana who specialized actually in commercial architecture named Mr. Seifert. And he actually designed the Miller County Courthouse in Texarkana. And if you look at this house, it's not a fancy, frilly house. It doesn't have a lot of complicated design features to it. It's all brick. The brick, we believe, we don't know this, but we believe the brick was made locally. It has a tile roof, and the tile was actually imported from Italy.
Wow. Dr. Longino, the name's Italian, isn't it?
Dr. Longino's family, we understand, was of Italian origin, yes.
There are some, to be a simple building, but there's just the woodwork, the doors, the glass. In the dining area, there was that little knockout area with the arch.
A beautiful, almost like a window seat.
Right.
With windows that open into the room, not out into the yard, but the windows open into the room. And a cushioned seating area. Just a really nice architectural feature there.
Did Dr. Longino practice here in the house, or did he have an office? Do you know?
He did. He actually built this house knowing that he wanted a space. That was quite common at the time. A lot of these doctors were country doctors, and they rode on horseback and that sort of thing. They didn't get up and drive an expensive car to the medical office. So he, as we understand it, he did actually design a room here to practice medicine from, and his patients
So who were the second owners then to the house?
The second owners were a very generous couple named Anne and Galloway Woodward, a long-time history in our area, the Woodward family. And they received the house in 83. Or in the early 80s, let me say.
Mm-hmm. I think you told me it had been added to the National Registry of Historic Places.
The National Register, yes. And we're also, as a result of that, on the Arkansas Register of Historic Places.
Okay. When did the museum receive the house?
We actually received the deed April the 10th of 2019. So we just celebrated our 4th birthday.
Oh, in the building.
In the building.
But you became incorporated way back in 2015?
We did. Right? We became a nonprofit in 2015 and worked getting our stuff together, getting our volunteers together, collecting artifacts, doing some preliminary planning, trying to earn some money.
You were a museum in search of a location.
We actually were there for a little bit.
So how did you ever connect with this building and secure it for the museum?
I've been aware of this building since I was a child. My family and I attended church at First United Methodist, which is our great neighbor across the street. And I had always been intrigued with this house. When I understood that the Woodwards were no longer living here, I contacted their heirs and asked them what their plans were for the house. Were they going to sell it? Did they have any immediate plans for it? And basically put a bug in their ear and said,
the seed was planted.
Yes, exactly. If you ever might consider donating that to our museum project, I would be eternally grateful. It just would solve so many issues, and it's such a prime location and such a beautiful old home, and might that be a possibility? And I think some time passed before I actually heard from the heirs, and then when I did, it was like, okay, this is what we want to do. So
this is a unique block in all of Magnolia. This one block from Vine Street. Oh, I don't remember the name. Is that Madison?
It is Madison.
That's the next. And you have the Methodist Church across the street, First United Methodist. Then you have this row of houses here. Yours kind of anchors the corner. What are the other houses?
Dr. Longino actually owned, and I don't think he ever owned the lot where the Methodist parsonage is, but he actually owned, there are 3 lots that were original to the city plat of Magnolia. And Dr. Longino owned this lot and the middle lot, which would be the one to our east. And he ended up building this house and taking up a little bit more than one actual lot. So there was like 3/4 of a lot left next door, and he built a house for his nephew.
You told me that old things just fascinate you. What's the importance of preserving some of those things?
Gosh, that's a kind of a hard question, but we really think it's important to preserve things that may never be seen again, may never be manufactured again, that belong to people that we will never see again.
Yeah.
So,
we were just looking at that old time clock from
isn't that fascinating?
From the lumber company, a huge cast iron device with up to 99 or 100 employees could spin the wheel and punch their time clock. And that's done electronically now in just a small device, but the craftsmanship that was in some of those things,
we just don't see it today.
We don't see it today.
We live in such a fast world.
In a disposable world.
And you're right, it's very disposable.
So what's the mission of the museum for
Well, our main mission is to preserve and protect the artifacts, the history and heritage of this area. That's kind of a broad, a broad thing to think about, a broad pledge to take. But we are very dedicated to that.
So you can tour the building. You come in the front door. There's I don't know what you'd call the room where you enter, the foyer, and then to the right of the foyer was another room.
That was actually their music room.
Oh.
And you have to keep in mind that this was at Victorian times, and entertaining guests and that sort of thing was still high on everybody's priority list.
And we're sitting in the parlor. There's a fireplace right here.
All the fireplaces in this house were wood burning.
We had been sitting earlier in the dining room, and that's a beautiful room. Also,
That's one of the largest rooms in the house.
wow. The upstairs is closed off. What would you find on the second floor?
The second level was actually all of the sleeping quarters. So there are three large bedrooms, a upstairs parlor, a bathroom that we are told was the first bathroom with indoor plumbing in the city.
Indoor plumbing, just
There
imagine.
was a sitting room and another small. These people obviously did a lot of sitting and visiting.
There wasn't television or radio
That's right.
to watch or listen to. It was fascinating to look in the dining room, the paintings that were in there that lined lots of paintings. I believe you told me they were all by local artists.
They are. Whether or not they considered themselves artists, we do. And we try to add to our collection as often as we can with various artists. Some of them are still with us, and some of them have passed on.
The house, you said, was the largest artifact donation the museum will probably ever receive, but you must have gotten other donations. What's the oldest donation?
Gosh, let me think a minute. The oldest one may be, John Morgan. John and Steve Morgan that had Warnock Furniture.
Right.
They got this desk and brought it. It was actually on a buying trip. And they brought it, and it supposedly is from the very, very early 1800s, late 1700s maybe. It is an exquisite piece of furniture. We also have some items that came from a large plantation in Louisiana. The owner actually lives here, and her husband is from here. But they restored a plantation home, and they collected things. And we have some things from the late 1700s.
Wow. What would you say is the most interesting donation you've received?
You're going to die when I tell you this. A leg.
A leg?
A leg.
You're right. Whose leg was it, Amy?
Well, we don't know.
Is it a real leg?
No, it's a prosthetic device.
Oh,
not a real leg.
Not a real leg. A prosthetic leg.
Not a real leg. No, it was located out in the country on private land near Emerson. And it is a prosthetic device that was used by someone who was missing their left leg from below the knee down. Now, immediately, we think of Civil War veterans because many of them suffered such horrible injuries during the war. We cannot believe that what we were given could possibly be from sometime between 1861 and 1865. But the people that located this were relatives of the individuals that owned this private land. And they were out for a walk by a creek one day, and she said they looked and they noticed this prosthetic was leaning up against a tree.
Oh, no.
Yes. Leaning up against a tree. And they could not believe their eyes. Mm-hmm. And at first I think they thought perhaps an animal had been involved in an injury to a human. Mm-hmm. The closer they got, they realized they saw the straps and the iron harnesses that came off the top of it, and they realized that it was a prosthetic device.
Where was it found?
Out in the country, in farmland in Emerson, close to Emerson, Arkansas, south of here.
Oh, that would make a great story.
Oh, it's fascinating. At any rate, they took it to. They did end up picking it up and taking it to the landowners who were their relatives, and they submitted it to Antique Roadshow when they visited New Orleans, and the gentleman who was the expert examined it and said that he believed it was from the Civil War. And
somewhere late at night, a horse can be heard galloping, and
oh, no,
the one-legged horseman comes looking for his... No, that's not it.
We really think it survived the test of time because it must have been underwater, and it's quite possible we actually had troops.
Is it wooden? Made from wood?
I can't tell what it is. Whatever it is petrified at this point. It's quite old. It even has.
And so you took it to the Antique Roadshow man in New York. What did he say? I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's very exciting, isn't it?
It is.
He believes that it was from the Civil War era. Now, whether or not it actually belonged to a veteran, we'll never know. There are no markings to indicate the manufacturer. These things, marketing prosthetic limbs after the Civil War was a huge business.
Oh, I bet so.
Yes.
I bet so. So when we finish the podcast, can you show it to me?
Well, I don't know. It might scare you. But I'll be happy to, yes.
We'll have to leave our readers and listeners.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what would be the most valuable contribution
Lord,
you've
let
had?
me think a minute.
You're the one who suggested that question. So
I know, and why did I tell you that?
There must be something of great value hidden in one of these drawers.
It depends on, I suppose, your definition of value. Money value, monetary value versus historical value. Sometimes those things are quite the same, and sometimes they're not. I think probably, I don't know, that I'm having a hard time coming up with a direct answer for you. I think one of the old cypress cabinets that we have that was from before the Civil War is historically probably the most interesting thing that we've got.
You've got some musical instruments in here.
We are overrun with musical instruments.
This is a piano.
That is a baby grand Steinway made in New York
But over
City.
here, is that a piano?
That is a melodeon, also called a harmonium.
Oh.
And it bridges the difference between a piano and an organ. It was not manufactured for very long because they were quite expensive. This particular one is made from imported rosewood. However, its owners lived in our area. So as a retail product, it didn't go over very well. The piano survived, and various different models of organs have survived.
You know, I was interested in the baskets that you have on display. They're not antique baskets, but they're made by one of your volunteers.
We do. We're very proud of our what we call local artisans collection. And we not only collect, but sell items that are made here in the county. And we have a lady who is a member and a very talented artist in her own. She's a volunteer. And she actually weaves what's called coiled pine needle baskets. This is a very extremely old art and she's basically fairly self-taught. Wow. I think she went to one class. She it produces exquisite creations. Only one exists of each creation.
Man. Would Cynthia mind if you gave her name?
Oh, Cynthia Keith. I'm sorry. Yes.
That's okay.
Her last name is Keith,
Yeah,
yes.
and she's from
our area as well. Her family grew up in Bussy.
We'll have to talk to her on a future podcast.
I think
because
that
it
would be
is
great.
Fascinating that someone could make. I've always said if South Arkansas could find a good market for pine straw,
she's multi-talented.
Oh.
That's not the only thing that she does. So yeah, I'll get you hooked up with Cynthia.
I
She's
just knew that.
fascinating.
I just knew that you would say one of our most intriguing contributions is the old camera and flash donated
by Steve
Ford. I was frankly glad to get rid of them, but they were from the estate of Donna Price,
Yes.
one of the photographers in the
Very
early 1900s.
popular photographer here.
Yeah, I interviewed her as a young reporter, probably in 1970 or 71. She was shutting down her photography business, and the camera, she'd just thrown it out. And
So she gave it to you?
Yeah, she gave it to me.
Well.
And it needed bellows, so I bought bellows and put on it. And most of what
You may have to explain to people what bellows are.
Bellows.
They're not going to know what a camera
yeah.
with bellows is.
Well,
But now they can come and see.
They'll have to come see. I couldn't describe it in a podcast. They can come see. And that you're working on a display of photographic memorabilia.
As early as the camera that you gave us. It's amazing, the models, the transformation photography has been through.
There are so many things to see in the museum. It's open every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday from 10 to 4.
And
special occasions.
Groups can also...
Groups are welcome, and they're welcome to schedule a specific private time.
Is there a point of contact, a phone number, an address? How would people get in touch with the...
Most people schedule their tours via email. Mm-hmm. We do have a phone number that I can give you.
I'll put both of those on the accompanying text with the podcast.
But we're, even though we're historical in nature, we're quite up on modern technology. So we have a cell phone, and we have email, and
okay,
a Facebook page, which is so much fun to share our old photos. On Facebook. People
that is one thing Facebook has done, is made things like that shareable, I suppose you'd say. There's so much to see at the museum. Well, Amy, we've been trying to get together for at least a month now. I'm glad we finally got to sit down and visit.
Oh, I'm too.
And everyone should come out. You will be open during the Blossom Festival.
We are. We're going to be open all day that day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a high traffic day, of course, for the
and you
the
can
square.
become a member of the
Yes, we have any kind of information you're interested in, the membership forms, where we are constantly recruiting good volunteers.
Great. Maybe somebody listening to this podcast will become one of those.
Well, and I neglected to tell you but this is interesting. We have got a special right now that will be running probably through the 1st of June. If you will volunteer a measly 6 hours a month, we will pay for your membership for a year.
Wow, 6 hours?
6 hours a month.
A month. What kind of things would that volunteer do?
Well, there are things that you may choose to do.
Mm-hmm.
We need people to man the museum during our open hours. You may learn to be a docent, which means, like Miss Ann does, kind of a tour guide. If you don't want to do that, you can work in the gift shop. If you don't want to do that, we've got a myriad of tasks that need to be done around here.
I would think somebody that wanted to clean or empty trash cans, or...
If that's their deal, they're more than welcome. We've got walls that could be washed. We've got sidewalks that can be edged. It's, we have to run this house just like anybody else running a house. So every homeowner task that the average guy does, we have to do that too.
Great. Maybe we'll have some volunteers from that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what a beautiful house, and it is so well decorated and so many fascinating things to see. Everyone should come down and take a tour of the museum every Wednesday.
Any Wednesday. And we do close like the Wednesday before Christmas.
Oh.
And the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, but,
Have to take some time off.
Well, absolutely.
All right. Well, Amy, I appreciate you taking time out.
Thank you so much.
This has been one of
and please come back anytime.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Life in LA. Feel free to contact us at steveford@gmail.com if you have a suggestion for a future topic. And as always, tell others about this podcast and share it on your favorite social media. You've been listening to Life in LA, a production of Steve Ford Photography.